Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to my channel. Thank you for watching. Today I wanted to share a realization that I had last night as I was falling asleep and something that has been really helping me today. And that is how to work with specific fears and specific obsessive fearful thoughts that keep coming up into your consciousness and that you don't want to deal with and that are just really negative in nature, really fearful, and it just feels like you're a prisoner to your mind and that you're constantly at war with your mind because you're just like, why do you keep thinking these thoughts? Like, I don't want to think this. Whatever, if you're going through something like this, I wanted to make a quick video to share with you something that I think might help you because in my direct experience, it's been very helpful. When we're having these fearful thoughts, whether it's a specific fear, whether it's just an overall negative flavor of thoughts coming up, or whether it's just like a bunch of obsessive and dark thoughts, the number one thing I feel like we need to understand is the reason that these feel so overwhelming is because there's been pressure accumulating in your being. What I mean by this is whenever we have a thought that we're really scared of, I'm going to use an example that I went through early on in my awakening, and I've questioned whether to use this example or not because I don't want to just give everyone something else to be afraid of, but I think it's important because it's something that was really dramatic for me. And that was the thought of dark entities. When I first awakened, I awakened to everything, the good and the bad, right? Or the light and the dark. And that fear was so consuming at the beginning of my awakening that every time it would come up, I would try to like escape it or suppress the thought or just like immediately go like, oh, that can't be true. I don't want to even look at that thought. And whatever your fear is, when we do that, what we end up doing is just allowing more pressure to build. Because when we shove that thought away or try to escape it or repress it, it doesn't get rid of the thought. In fact, it does the opposite. We just refuel the thought with our fear of it. And when we have a fear of a thought, what happens is that inner fear just increases every time the thought comes up because it just keeps coming up and we don't like it. No, I hate that thought. I don't want to think of dark entities. I don't want to think that they're real. I don't want to think of whatever your fear is. And then that in itself builds the energy of that thought. And the energy of fear starts building in your being. The energy of negativity starts building in your being because these thoughts, they keep getting your energy, they keep getting your focus, interest, and attention, and so they just keep growing in force and power, and then eventually these thoughts just have so much of a hold over you that a lot of things can just manifest from just all this accumulated energy of suppressing and trying to escape these thoughts. And that's a lot of times if you're having a lot of head pressure, a lot of headaches, anything with energy in the head that feels uncomfortable, that's a really good indication that you're probably suppressing thoughts that you don't want to think. And the reason I would always suppress those thoughts early on in my awakening was because I didn't want to feel that dark entities could be real. I was so scared of the idea. So that thought, because I was scared of the thought of those things being real, that thought actually had like a hold over me and I was a prisoner to that thought. And because I wouldn't just open to the thought, I actually built a lot of that darker energy up in me, and I had a lot of fearful things occur in my consciousness because I had so much of the energy from that thought built up in me. And the reason it was built up and the reason it might be built up in you is because you're afraid of the thought. And I just wanted to give a long explanation of that so you could really understand the mechanics of how you get to the point of being like helpless over a very busy, negative, fearful mind that just won't stop. It won't stop because we've created the energy behind those thoughts by not wanting to think them or allow them to come up in our brain. So that's the first thing. Now, here's the realization I had. Just recently, I have been going through like another mini, like fearful thought storm type thing. Like every now and then on the awakening trail, the mind will get really busy because as we start unhooking from the story of the mind, as we start deepening into our space of being, as we start deepening into our presence, the mind will start retaliating by trying to grab you back. And what it will do, it will use things that it knows you're most afraid of. So it can recapture your attention and recapture control of you. Because that's ultimately what the mind wants. And the reason it wants it, it's not some evil thing. It's not the mind isn't inherently bad. It just wants your control over you because it's a survival machine. And it hasn't come to trust life enough yet to yield control to life so it can take a back seat. It does happen, but it takes some time. So what it will do when you're starting to unhook from its influence and unhook from its demands and fears and its limited movements, it will just every now and then flare up with a huge thought storm to try to pull you back. And that's what mine's been doing these last few days. And I fell back into the habit of trying to suppress it. I was like, I don't want to be thinking these thoughts. I'm beyond these thoughts right now. And I started realizing, I'm like becoming afraid of a few of my thoughts again. And last night I just finally was like, oh shit. That's why I feel like such a prisoner to my mind these last few days is I've been trying to avoid what it's projecting into me. And it's like, I'm letting it recapture control because I'm trying to escape and suppress it and therefore refueling its energy and giving the thoughts it's projecting more noise, like more intensity and like a stronger pull over me because I'm trying to resist these thoughts. And so last night I was like, oh yeah, I can't do that. So I just like let these thoughts come up. All this fearful, crazy shit just come up, and I just like let the thoughts it was like a geyser had sprung. Like I finally just released the pressure valve on all these thoughts I was trying not to think these last few days. And last night as I was falling asleep, I could just feel the energy behind and underneath all these thoughts just come rushing up, and I slept really well finally. And then today the thought storm tried to come again, and I just okay, fine. Think whatever you want to think, brain. You can throw any crazy thought out there, and that's great. And as much as scary as it sounds, as much as you're trying to, really pull me back in with fear, you can just think whatever you want to think. And I just really have been just letting my mind and my brain just exhaust itself, like let it run itself out of steam on its own. Just let it throw up one fearful thought after another. And in this way, when we're allowing the energy and the thoughts to come up and we're not afraid of them, we're not suppressing them, we're not refueling them, and they naturally just start dissolving in intensity, and then your mind will come to this more calm, still place. But in order to do this, here's the crux, and here's a very major factor in this process. You have to be willing to be okay with the fear happening. Whatever your mind is trying to scare you with, like for me, early in my awakening, it was dark entities. Eventually, I just had to say, fuck it. Okay, I don't care if there's dark entities. I don't care if I have to see one or if they want to come here. I don't care because I know I'm an unharmable being at my essence. I know there's no good and bad or evil or whatever. It's not a war of good and bad. It's just everything's just a different shade of light. Even the darkest dark that we would consider like a dark entity, it still comes from the same creation. It's still all one. And so there's nothing to fear. Everything that manifests as energy, whether we call it a divine, a demon, a rock, a tree, a human, it all comes from the same energy. And those were the insights that came to me when I finally opened to the possibility of there being these dark things. Because that's the point I want to get to. When you allow the possibility of your fear being true, you take all the power from your mind back, because it can no longer blackmail you anymore. And that's the big grasp, that's the big thing the mind has on you, is this ability to just blackmail you into submission and into being a prisoner to its movement, because it knows if you're afraid of these projections that it has you. And it can just throw up a projection of what you're afraid of anytime it feels like it's losing its grasp over you, because it knows you'll just, I don't want to see that, I can't see that, no. And then guess what? The mind has you. But if you will just, when it throws it up, just be like, you know what? I'm okay with that. Whatever the fear is, fine, mind. Keep throwing it up. Throw it up all day. Put it in my face all day. Whatever the negative, obsessive thought that comes up. I know, just know in your heart that you are a divine, eternal being that's having a temporary human experience, and that you have a body, you have a mind. You are not your mind. You are not your body. You're something much greater, and your being is unharmable. There's nothing the mind can do to harm you. You only harm yourself when you believe what the mind is trying to tell you. That's the only way you can harm yourself. And here is the key thing about this. Just because you say you're okay with a fear that the mind's projecting, just because you're okay with it happening, whatever that fear is, doesn't mean it's going to happen. That's not how it works. It simply is actually the opposite. The more you resist the fear the mind gives you, the more you're going to get an outer manifestation of darkness and negativity, because when you resist it, you're just building up and accumulating that pressure like we talked about earlier in the video. So the key is, when the mind projects fearful, obsessive thoughts, allow them to come up. And to allow them to come up, you have to be okay with the fear happening. You have to say, you know what? I don't fucking care. I'm not going to be a prisoner to your mind. If this happens, then so be it. But guess what? You're not going to blackmail me with these thoughts anymore. I'm not going to be a prisoner to your movements. And every time it comes up, run for cover and try to escape it. So you have to become okay with it. And then what you'll notice is these thoughts will, at first, they'll come rushing up because you've been like pushing them down for so long. So of course, they're going to explode out initially. But if you'll just let this energy and let these thoughts just keep coming, and you're just there as space, you're just a space of awareness, observing it all. Not getting pulled into it and going for a ride with the thoughts, but just watching them, just being like, wow, mind, you are really trying to scare me with that thought. That's kind of what I've been doing today. What you'll notice is, over time, that energy will just kind of run out on its own, because you're no longer participating in doing, like, you're not recycling the same thoughts, because you're not participating in it anymore, in the drama of it. And this energy will just come pouring out. And then soon the energy behind those thoughts and emotions, because there's always an energetic and emotional component to thought, that energy will start releasing from your being. And then as that happens, the thoughts start, like we were talking, slowing down. The mind comes to more of a balance. And then you have peace. And that's what I really want to illuminate to you all, is to just allow the thoughts to come up, become okay with the fear actually happening, because you know in your heart you are unharmable. And just hold a space of awareness, hold a space of presence, and know that you're not your mind and you're not your thoughts. And just because you're having a thought doesn't mean you need to believe it, but that doesn't mean you need to run from it and suppress it either. Just let your mind do what it wants. Just say, fuck it, mind, do what you want, I don't care. You go crazy if you want to today. Try it for one day even. Just allow today, tomorrow, if you're having trouble with obsessive dark thoughts, give it a day, an experiment, and just say, you know what, today, mind, you get to think whatever you want to think. as hard and as often and as intense as you want to. I'm not going to interfere or try to stop you in any way. And it's just your day to go crazy, mind. And I'm just going to be here as a presence and just have at it. Anything as fearful as you want, as dark as you want, bring it. Just throw your best punch, mind. You know what I mean? Like literally have that moment with yourself. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Stick with it. It might be hard at first because like I said, that energy, it's built up in your being. It might explode at first. That's a really good sign. That's a great sign. That means a lot of energy is being released. And if you have dark obsessive thoughts, the reason you do is because there's a lot of dark energy that is fueling those. So when you're feeling the release of this dark energy, you're going to be feeling a lot of intense dark thoughts too. It's okay. Just stay with it. Keep allowing it to come up. And after some time, you're really going to start to feel how powerful you are within. Because when you become okay with the fear happening and you allow the fearful thoughts to come up, you'll actually start realizing, holy shit, the opposite is happening. The fearful thought isn't happening. Actually, I'm becoming less afraid of the fearful thought happening because I'm showing myself that my being is unharmable and that this is just energy, and that it's limited energy. The only thing that makes this energy feel unlimited and overwhelming is my fear of it. Fear is an inherently limited energy, but fear of fear, now that can feel unlimited. So just allow the fear up and just stay with it. I've been through a lot of these fear purges, and they can be super intense and super dark. But waiting for us on the other side is this freedom, this spaciousness in our being, and this quieter, more peaceful mind. And it's very much worth it. And I think it will be definitely worth your guys' effort to try this. Let me know how this goes for you. If you have any other questions, I've gone through this many times. So it's something that I'm very passionate about because I used to suffer from chronic fear, like crazy anxiety, panic attacks, could barely leave my room at times. So I know how dark it can get to be a prisoner to a fearful mind. I know how impossible it can feel to be trapped with these obsessive dark thoughts. So I hope that this gives you guys some insight. I hope my experience can help you guys. And thank you so much for watching. Namaste.